In 1981, IBM released the 5150, and it quickly became the de facto standard for what a PC should be. However, initially its graphical and sound capabilities weren't much better than the Apple II. In fact, other systems on the market, like the Commodore 64, vastly outperformed Big Blue and left them in the dust, at least when it came to sound and graphics. IBM quickly went on to become hugely successful in the business market, and eventually also won the race, before they lost it all. This short series of videos is about the last PCjr found at Computer Reset. If you want to watch part 1 first, you will find the link in the description below. In 1984, IBM released the PCjr, intended as a lower cost variant of the IBM PC, in order to compete with other home computers, such as the Apple II and the Commodore 64. In other words, this was IBM's attempt to make a PC for the home market. The PCjr is considered as a flop by most people, and its biggest legacy is probably that it was cloned by Tandy, who managed way better on the home market. Why it didn't succeed has already been discussed in many other YouTube videos, so let's get to the good bits instead. This cool little machine offered graphics similar to CGA, but with several new video modes. The primary improvement over CGA is the greater color depth. CGA could only display 4 colors in its medium resolution mode, and only 2 colors in its high-res mode. The PCjr increased these to 16 and 4 colors. Instead of the nasty PC speaker in the 5150, the PCjr has 4-voice square-wave audio with independent volume and frequency control, and an additional noise channel. These exclusive PCjr graphics and sound capabilities received wide support from game developers in the mid to late 80s. So in a way, this project is at least partially about trying out some games that may or may not be better on the PCjr than on other systems. In part 1 we had a look at how this IBM ended up on my bench, and we tried to figure out its origins. We also did a complete teardown of the display and cleaned it, to get rid of a few decades of warehouse smell. I was expecting to recap the board in that video because the image was a bit unstable, but magically it started to work normally as I was about to start. However, while I was recording the outro, the problem came back. So in this video we are going to recap both boards inside the display. If you are a regular viewer, you know that I rarely recap anything, unless it's actually faulty. And if not, this is a good time to hit that bell icon below. Anyways, something weird is going on with this system, and I have to place my bets on something. After the first PCjr video, I got an email from the volunteer who sorted me out with this machine at Computer Reset. Apparently it was pieced together from the remaining stock of parts, and this system was the last he had all the parts for. He also told me that the display couldn't hold horizontal sync and showed horizontal tearing of the image. The cause turned out to be a bad C519, which he replaced with a new Nichicon cap. That probably means that the mystery is solved regarding the service order we found in the box. This display was the unit that was sent in by Boston Public School, and they probably got a replacement display. So this is quite likely their old faulty unit. So if you went to Boston Public School in the late 80s, this is the display you played DOS games on when the teacher wasn't looking. Thanks for putting that dent in the upper right corner, by the way. Anyways, he also did a bunch of things with the computer and the keyboard. I will get back to that later in this project. So with that background, I think recapping the display is a pretty good bet. If one of the caps was bad, chances another cap is marginal and might be causing the flickering on the screen. So let's crack that display open and check those caps. Before we do, I'd like to thank our sponsor PCBWay. Aside from making excellent PCBs, they also do CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing and injection molding. Check out their shared projects page where you will find some really cool projects for your vintage PC. Get an instant quote now at PCBWay.com. By the way, thanks to PCBWay, I have ordered a new microphone today, so you won't need to put up with this crappy sound for much longer. Thank you PCBWay for supporting this channel. If you want to support this channel too, I have launched a Patreon account today, so this is your chance to become one of the early supporters of this channel and help me make more and better videos about vintage computers just like this one. I already did a full disassembly in part 1, so I am going to skip ahead here quite a bit. I'm not going to skip the disclaimer though. Don't mess around inside CRT displays. They may contain dangerous voltages, even with the cord unplugged. So our problem here is that this display seems to be very sensitive to interference. In my attempts to make that flickering go away, I have turned off just about everything in the studio, but that didn't help. It does however go away when I move the display around. So whatever our trouble here is, it seems to be picked up from the PCjr. Unfortunately, I don't have the adapter that will make this display work with other systems to test. So we will probably build one in this mini-series. I haven't checked yet, but it's probably an easy project to make such an adapter. So let's start with the neck board. That means getting rid of this shield. I have an adapter that would enable me to connect my 5153s to the PCjr. But unfortunately they are in a pretty bad condition. So they have 10 times worse flickering than this display. They are lined up for a restoration video in a few weeks. But that doesn't help us much today. Okay, so now we have access to those caps. And IBM left quite a lot of flux on this PCB. I guess I'm gonna have to clean that mess up. Okay, let's start with C201. And they are marked on this side of the board too. So that might make this a little bit easier. And unfortunately they have bent legs. So that is going to take some extra time. And I am of course skipping ahead quite a bit here. And I really like the fact that they are marked on this side of the PCB. This is saving me quite a lot of time. And I am putting all the old caps aside, so we can check them later. And they are, by the way, Rubicons. And the polarity is also very clearly marked on this board. And next we have C204. And this solder is coming off really easily. So I didn't have to add any fresh solder to get these caps off. Yeah, that solder is coming right off without giving me any trouble whatsoever. And that cap is a 470 micro 6.3. So I'm gonna go with 10 volts instead. Because there weren't any 6.3 volts available when I ordered. And that should be just fine. And by the way, I'm using Multicore 6040 solder. But instead of going with a 0.5mm that I normally do, I'm trying out 0.38. So this stuff is even thinner. And so far I'm pleased. Next up we have C607. Yeah, I wish all my projects were this easy to recap. And the last cap on the neckboard is C209. And it's a Rubicon 50 volt 0.1. And for some reason I ordered a Nichicon 0.1 100 volts. So I guess the 50 volts wasn't available. And I mixed and matched different brands depending on what was available. but obviously just known good brands from a reliable supplier. Okay, neckboard is done, and I obviously skipped ahead here a bit. And the neckboard had 7 electrolytics in total, and very nice and easy to work on. And I guess I'm gonna have to clean off that old flux that IBM left on the board. By the way, this board was made by Mitsubishi, so perhaps they made this entire display. Okay, so these displays are not known for having bad caps, but they are known for having some cracked solder joints and mechanical faults on the PCBs, like cracks and such. You may have seen David Murray's video about his PCjr, and he had a cracked PCB. So knowing that, I made a thorough inspection, and I found this here. This transistor here has an unsoldered leg. So let's fix that. It's not likely to be causing our trouble. And I guess I better remove that bridge I just made. Okay, I see. So apparently these two pads are connected together. So they should in fact be bridged. So let's try again. And the only thing left to do now with the neckboard is to put back that shield. And now we can move on to the main board. And the back of the main PCB has a shield made out of another PCB. So we are gonna have to remove it to get access to those caps. And by the way, I don't think I have mentioned this in part 1, but I really like this display. The colors are really vivid and the display is very, very sharp. Aside from that upper right corner that is flickering. So I'm probably going to use this display with other systems too. If we still have some time left at the end, we will make a comparison and I will show you. And some of these caps are not that easy to reach. So C303 is tucked in down here. 100 micro 10 volts. And most of the cap seems to be Rubicons. And as I go here, I try to keep an eye out for signs of leakage from these caps. And one of the caps had some kind of goo underneath, but it was really hard to tell whether it was flux or electrolyte. I guess the ESR meter will tell us when we check those caps. And it's moving along quite nicely, so I have skipped ahead here a bit. But I decided to try to straighten the pins first, before I remove that old solder. And that turned out to be much easier. Yeah, this is probably going to be a relatively short video. But here in real life, this is a pretty lengthy project. But I think it's worth it. Well, I can't say for sure, but I think this cap here may have leaked. There is some kind of gunk here. I can't say what it is. But it sure looks like it could be capacitor juice. It comes off quite easily, so it's not flux. Okay, so here's our first big one. This is a 330 micro, 180 volts. I'm gonna make those legs a bit shorter to make it easier to desolder. I hope I don't have to change tip on my desoldering gun. I think it barely fits. But nothing much is happening, so I'm gonna have to crank up the heat. We might as well add some fresh solder while we wait for the desoldering gun to heat up. Okay, let's try again. Yeah, I think that worked. Just about. We're gonna replace it with a 200 volt cap, because that's what we have. Now I definitely found a leaky cap. Check out C530 here. That is definitely a leaky cap. Don't know how well it shows up on camera, but there is some gunk left on the cap too. So I guess recapping this board was a good decision after all, whether it caused our flickering or not. Okay, so I cleaned up the juice. Let's replace this one with a Nichicon. And we have another leaky cap here. So check out this beefy Mitsubishi cap here. It has definitely started to spill its guts. It's a bit hard to get on camera, but I think you can see that juice coming out of that cap. It's not much, but it's just gonna get worse. So good choice indeed recapping this board. And here's our next leaky cap. Check out C412 here. That is definitely cap juice. And you should be able to see the juice on the cap on the camera as well. So yeah, another one. This, by the way, is C519. That has been replaced previously. So I'm obviously not going to replace it again. And here's another one, C409. Definitely some juice there. And on the cap as well. Well, I have skipped ahead here a bit. And I found a couple of more leaky caps. Now it's time to replace the last cap. And check this out. We have a problem. It's tucked in behind the flyback. So how the hell am I gonna reach that cap? I guess I should try with tweezers. Come on, you little bugger. And how am I gonna get a new cap in there? Even if I get this one out. Oh crap. Well, there's absolutely no way that we can get a new cap in that tight space. So we're gonna have to remove that large shield that sits around the flyback. Not very service friendly, that's for sure. Damn, that is a lot of solder. I'm gonna have to clean my gun after this. And that huge shield is just sucking up all the heat, of course. Why do they make it so bloody thick? And if that wasn't enough, it also acts as a heat sink for this big transistor here. So I'm gonna have to detach it from the shield and then add some fresh paste, of course. Not an easy cap to replace. And apparently it's also screwed down to the flyback. So we're gonna have to undo at least one screw here. I'm struggling a bit to get this on camera, but I think it's loose now. Yeah, here's that bloody cap. So C514. Not a fun cap to replace. So let's get a fresh cap in that place. We should be ready for reassembly. Okay. That bloody shield is back on the board. And I have some cleaning to do before we can do the reassembly. Okay, I checked and double checked every single cap twice. This is not a good project to make mistakes on. And we should be ready for a test now. And I did the entire reassembly off camera. And if you want to watch the reassembly, you can find it in part 1. Okay, let's quickly test these caps and see what kind of values we've got. So let's start with the caps on the neck board. And this one is a 100 micro 25 volts. And we're getting 0.2 ohms. And according to the meter it's good. And the next one here is identical. We're getting 0.3 ohms. So that one is okay too. And the next one is 0.1 micro 50 volts. We've got 18 ohms. And the meter says good if below 4.7 micro. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through all of them and skip ahead quite a bit. Otherwise I'm going to bore you to death. So that is good. That cap is good too. And that one is good. And good again. So all the caps on the neck board are okay. So let's check these two. So this beefy Nichicon is probably good for a few more decades. 0.025 ohms. Okay, next up we have the Mitsubishi that clearly has leaked, but it's still reading good with 0.06 ohms. Next up we have this 22 micro and it's good too. And this one is good. Okay, I skipped to the last one here. And they still check out good, even though some of them have started to leak. So that didn't really tell us much. I think the only way to find out is to make a proper test of the display. Okay, let's see if it works. Well, that sounded normal. And yeah, it still works. So that's a good start. But the system doesn't boot my diskette. Let's try again. And no, it doesn't work. So something is wrong. Let's see if it works at all. Well, it boots into BASIC. Well, I have a DOS copy of King's Quest, but that won't work on this system, because we need a special self-booting diskette to run on this machine. So I emailed Gavin, the guy at Computer Reset, and he told me that boot floppies were very sensitive on the PCjr. So he recommended me to clean the heads. I can't quite fit SEQURE tip underneath here. So those read and write heads are quite tight. So let's clean them with some IPA. He actually already cleaned the heads before I got the machine. But let's make sure they still are clean. Okay, test 2. No, we're not quite that lucky, unfortunately. So something has gone bad. Okay, let's try to reseat the controller with some deoxit. Let's add some deoxit in the connector for the disk drive as well. Okay, known good drive, freshly tested, stacked on cardboard with PC-DOS 2.0 on the floppy disk. Let's see what happens. And it seeks from the disk and it works. Well, I guess that's a good thing, because that means the controller is good. Now let's try the King's Quest floppy. Fingers crossed. And no, it doesn't work, so it's the damn floppy that has gone bad. Well, in a way that's a good thing, because that's a relatively easy thing to fix. Well, then we are quite limited here, because that's the only game I had for this machine. Unless we count... Oh, come on! I can't even play Donkey Bass on this machine. Well, I guess we could run some diagnostics to see if we can get some flickering going on here. Hopefully not. Well, this is looking pretty good, but these graphics are very basic, so I would have liked to see how that game behaved. But things are looking pretty good so far. Well, there isn't much you can do with a PCjr with just 128K. So the only software I've got are these. So these are exploring your IBM PCjr and your PCjr sampler. So don't really know what these are. But since that's what we've got, that's what we'll try. Oh, come on. Okay, so is that disk bad too? Well, this is something I found at Computer Reset, so it's not tested. And it has been baked for a few decades in Texas. Let's try this one. Oh, I just realized that perhaps I need to boot on this disk too. No, I don't think so. I guess then we'll try exploring the IBM PCjr. Let's see if it boots on that floppy. I think it does, because it seeks. And yes, it does. Okay, so I have one working floppy for this machine. Okay, and we've got music. Digital learning systems. Oh man, that is loud. We better turn that volume down. Exploring the PCjr. And the volume knob is backwards. Well, the image looks pretty stable so far. And I think it's a bit overexposed on camera. Let me try to change that. Okay, that probably looks better. Okay, instructions. And what's interesting here is that the display doesn't flicker on camera, which most displays do. So apparently this CRT is synced up perfectly with my camera, but instead it's showing up some stripes. So those stripes are not here in real life. That's something that the camera picks up. Let me try some other adjustments. No, I can't make them go away. So that's bloody annoying. So I don't see these lines that you see on camera. They just aren't there. Okay, so what's this thing here? Keyboard instructions. That is pretty boring. I'll try to skip. Welcome, IBM has made every effort to make your personal computer easy to use and learn. Well, this looks pretty damn boring. Oh, and we've got more music. And well, as expected, this is very basic. So I'm just skipping ahead here. It just tells the user what all the keys are for. Okay, and we've got floating hearts. And apparently we are using FunWriter. Okay, we've got a menu. Hearts on, off. Let's try that. F7. This is like going to the circus. What else have we got? Radio on, off. Let's try that. It's a bit silly, this Junior. This is actually worse than going to the circus. Let's turn that off. And the heart too, thank you. Well, I don't think this is gonna get any better. So this is what I'm stuck with this weekend. If you like the racing hearts, you can turn them on by pressing F7. No thanks. Well, I'm gonna have to end with a bit of a cliffhanger here. Because I would have liked to test it with slightly more advanced graphics than this. But this is what we've got right now. But I can't see any flickering going on the display. At least not now. So what I'm gonna do is to try my best to use this machine for a few hours. Not sure what I'm gonna do with 128K. And I'm also going to try to move the display around. Because in part 1 that flickering disappeared, depending on where I had the display. So when I record the next part in this mini-series, I would have done a more thorough test. And we will know for sure whether those caps were the problem or not. Thank you for watching. If you want to support this channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, ring the bell below, and consider becoming one of the very first patrons of this channel. You will find the link in the description below.